What's your gut reaction when you hear the phrase lifestyle change? Well, if you're like most people, it's probably a mix of excitement and anxiety. On one hand, you're energized by the promise of transformation, but on the other hand, you've already anticipating the inevitable challenges and setbacks and how hard this is going to actually be. But here's what I've discovered after decades of helping thousands of patients through this transformation, is that this emotional roller coaster isn't just normal, it's actually predictable, and it's a psychological pattern that we see over and over again. And so understanding this can be the key to breaking free from the yo-yo cycle of the short-lived motivation followed by frustration and then giving up. So let me share something fascinating about motivation that most people don't realize. Your why isn't just a psychological, it's also deeply biological. So when you connect to a meaningful purpose that resonates at your core, your brain literally changes. And the neuroimaging studies show us that there's increased activity in the ventral striatum and the prefrontal cortex, and these areas are associated with motivation and long-term planning. At the same time, your body produces a biochemical cocktail that supports transformation. Chemicals like dopamine, which increases and enhances focus and drives action. Oxytocin releases, and it strengthens your connection to your goals. Cortisol levels will normalize, reducing stress-based decision-making. And GABA production will increase, supporting emotional regulation. So when I ask you to identify your why, I'm not just giving you a motivational exercise. I'm asking you to actively reshape your neurochemistry to support lasting transformation. Now let's explore the 5 predictable stages that you'll experience during any significant transformation. Now this model maps the psychological terrain that you're gonna have to traverse on your healing journey. So the first is that we begin with what I call uninformed optimism. This is the honeymoon phase. You're pumped up about your new health kick, envisioning your future boundless energy, and anything feels possible. But beware, this initial excitement is often based on unrealistic expectations of quick and easy results. And we've all been there, we've all done it, right? But it's uninformed because you haven't yet confronted any real challenges during this journey. So neurologically, this stage is characterized by dopamine-driven anticipation. Your brain's reward prediction circuits are highly active, but they're working with limited information. So you feel great, but this feeling alone isn't enough to sustain long-term change. Then we move into the second stage, informed pessimism. And this is where it's reality check time, right? A few weeks in, the novelty wears off, and you realize that this whole transformation thing is a lot harder than other people have made it look. And the doubt starts to creep in, and the results start to slow, or they even plateau, and suddenly your former habits start looking pretty tempting. This is where many people throw in the towel. They're unaware that this discomfort is a normal part of the process. And during this stage, your amygdala, that part of your brain that is activated when there's threat, it becomes more active, and it starts to detect a gap between your expectations and your reality. And then your brain is literally registering that the effort required for change as a potential threat. This isn't weakness. It's your protective brain doing exactly what it's evolved to do. And if you continue on your journey, you'll reach what we call the valley of despair. Welcome to the emotional rock bottom of change. Motivation has left the building, and frustration is at an all-time high, and your mind is churning out excuses faster than a politician at a press conference. And this is the critical juncture where most people quit and revert to their old patterns, convinced that they've failed yet again. In this valley, your lower brain, that protective primal part, is working overtime. It's flooding you with all the reasons that you should abandon ship, that this is too hard, you're not making progress. But remember, this isn't reality. It's your protective brain trying to maintain the status quo. This is precisely when the stop technique becomes essential. Now, we'll explore this tool much greater in depth later, but here's a brief overview of what you can start using right away. First is the S. S stands for stop. So the moment that you notice resistance arising, that tension in your body, that frustration building, those thoughts start spiraling out of control, pause whatever you're doing. And this interrupts the automatic stress response before it gains momentum. T means take a step back. Physically, take one step back, or take a step back from your thoughts for a second and take a deep breath. This will literally create space between you and your reactive thoughts, helping you shift from that automatic reaction to a conscious response. And O is observe and notice how your resistance is showing up. Now, within O, I have another mnemonic, and I apologize, but I just couldn't resist. But it's BET. B stands for what are you feeling and noticing in your body? And then we move to the E, emotions. What feelings are you experiencing? Are you anxious? Are you sad? Are you resentful? Are you jealous? Are you overwhelmed? Whatever it is, label it. And T, what is going on with your thoughts? What are the stories that your protective, reactive brain is trying to tell you? And then P, you're going to proceed with a new narrative that includes both acceptance and self-belief. And so the framework for this acceptance and self-belief statement goes like this. I'm experiencing blank right now, and I accept this is happening, and I choose to believe blank. For example, I'm experiencing overwhelming fatigue right now, and I accept that this is where my energy's at. And I choose to believe that my body knows how to restore balance when I work with it rather than against it. Or I'm experiencing frustration with my weight plateau right now, and I accept that this is a part of the journey, and I choose to believe each small step forward creates lasting change. Or I'm experiencing intense digestive discomfort right now, and I accept that these sensations are present, and I choose to believe that my body has incredible healing capacity when I give it the support it needs. This technique might seem simple, but it's remarkably powerful when practiced consistently. And we'll explore each step in much greater detail later, but for now, just focus on catching those moments of resistance to your symptoms or those health challenges and working with these 4 steps. Now, the key is not to wait until you're in full stress response. The earlier that you can catch this resistance building, the more effective this technique becomes. But here's the plot twist. The valley of despair isn't the end of the story. It's the catalyst for true transformation. If you can muster the grit to push through the psychological low point, you'll emerge with something far more powerful than blind optimism. You'll develop resilience and self-mastery. And this brings us to the 4th stage, informed optimism. And this is what I like to call the breakthrough threshold. And congratulations, you've reached a critical juncture in your transformation journey. This is where the magic happens if you continue to push through. And you've developed a more mature, realistic relationship with change. You understand that setbacks are normal. And more importantly, you begin to see yourself differently. And here's the fascinating insight. As you get closer to reaching your goal, it actually gets harder. I want you to think of it like navigating to a specific destination. Let's say at first we're in New York and I tell you to go to California. Well, you just go west. But as you approach your precise location, you need more fine-tuning and attention to detail. And this is why the early wins come easily. Dropping those first few pounds, establishing healthy habits, but as you near your ideal state, it requires more nuance and more precision. And this is exactly where most people get distracted and discouraged. And there's a critical window that most people never reach. And I call it that breakthrough threshold. And that's the point where the temporary motivation transforms into unshakable identity. The problem is that this threshold lies just beyond your breaking point. Finally, though, if you persist, you'll reach the 5th stage, that success and fulfillment. You've arrived at the summit of sustainable transformation. Your health habits are now ingrained parts of your identity rather than the short-term burst of willpower. External validation is no longer necessary because your commitment comes from a deep, unshakable place from within. And that critical distinction is that this journey isn't just about changing what you do, it's about becoming someone new. So imagine if we have a pyramid with the be, do, and have. The be at the bottom, the do in the middle, and the have at the top. Your state of being, right here at the bottom, determines what you do, which then determines what you have. And most people get this wrong. They're focusing on having something instead of who they're becoming. So when you start eating healthy just to lose weight, you're setting yourself up for failure. But when someone decides, I am a healthy person, that identity shifts, creates lasting change. And here's what's fascinating about your identity. Is that when you notice yourself slipping back into your old patterns and you feel concerned about it, that's not failure. That's evidence that you've already begun to embody your new identity. Bad habits become uncomfortable when they no longer align with who you're becoming. Most people never make it past the earlier stages. They become what I call hoppers. They're constantly chasing the next quick fix, or they give up entirely. And they've trapped in this exhausting loop of uninformed optimism, crashing into the valley of despair, and ultimately abandoning their goals. Now, to break free, you must recognize that your brain is an excuse-making machine. So when you're slogging through those challenges, your mind will scream at you to quit. This is where the stop technique becomes your psychological superpower. It creates a sacred pause between sabotaging thoughts and your actions. But here's what those success story photos don't show you, that reaching your goal isn't the end of the story. It's just the new beginning. Because even after you've climbed your metaphorical mountain, life doesn't stop throwing you challenges. The key difference is not that successful people no longer encounter difficulties. It's that they've developed the resilience, the skills, and the identity to navigate through these challenging times. So think of your transformation like maintaining a garden. Reaching your ideal state isn't about creating a perfect, unchanging landscape. It's about developing the ongoing skills to nurture growth and adapt to changing seasons. So the moment that you feel like quitting is often the moment right before exponential growth can begin. This isn't just motivational fluff, guys. This is based on the psychological principle of productive discomfort, is that our capacity for growth expands most rapidly when we're operating at the edge of our current abilities. So it's supposed to be a little bit painful, a little bit uncomfortable. And the path to lasting transformation isn't paved with perfect starts. It's built on imperfect persistence. Your breakthrough isn't waiting in another program or another diet. It's waiting on the other side of the wall that you keep running away from. So the question isn't whether you can start another health journey. The question is, are you ready to become the person who no longer needs to start over? Remember, this isn't a 90-day challenge or a 6-month program. This is your life's work. The joy isn't in reaching some finish line. It's in the daily process of becoming more fully yourself. Until next time, this is Dr. Josh Shields reminding you that your best health is yet to come. And if you like today's message, make sure that you subscribe or follow us and hit that notification bell, because I'll be putting out a lot more great videos just like this one. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.